Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson Diaz, double the expense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to by Sweet Summits by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, now on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Summit, Serena Wagner. And the Sultan of Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond, with his latest All of Me. New music coming soon to your favorite platform, ericdiamondmusic.com. Check him out on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and more. We're here with a terrific lady who's a best-selling author of 4 titles. She's been included in USA Today and Amazon bestseller list. She's a graduate magna cum laude from University of Penn and New York University Law School for pursuing commercial litigation. She became a teacher at Benjamin Cardozo School of Law, taught legal writing, lawyering skills, and returned to school, get her MFA in fine arts. Has a brand new book out, which is a legal thriller that tackles timely yet timeless issues such as reproductive rights, true stories, incarceration, society expectations of women based on true stories, and involves a lady that's a quest for justice. We'll talk more about that with the immigration situation. Live, ladies and gentlemen, Plus Studio, somewhere in beautiful downtown New York City, the amazing bestseller author and also the author of the book, Counting Backwards, the multi-talented Jacqueline Friedland. Jacqueline, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Jacqueline. So you're a best-selling author of 4 titles, including USA Today and Amazon bestseller. You're a graduate magna cum laude from University of Penn, New York University Law School for pursuing commercial litigation. You became a teacher at Benjamin Cardozo School of Law, taught legal writing, lawyering skills, and you returned to school, get your MFA in fine arts. You have a new book, which is Legal Thriller, tackles timely yet timeless issues, including reproductive rights, incarceration, society's expectation of women based on true stories. And this involves Jessica Gidney's quest for justice into an immigration case turning into a conspiracy. The book is called Counting Backwards. Before we get to that, Jacqueline, tell us how you first got started.
Tell us what?
How you first got started.
Ah,
Way back,
uh,
way back, way back.
well, okay, I'm going to take you back to when I was in college. I was an English major and I didn't know what I wanted to do after graduation. And so when I got to be a junior, my parents sort of said to me, it's time to start thinking really hard about your next steps. And so I went to see my favorite English professor. And I told him that I was thinking about getting a PhD in English. And he very quickly talked me out of it. He told me all of the things that I would hate about it, like fighting for tenure and, struggling to make sure I was getting scholarly articles published and dealing with office politics. And he said, if what you're interested in is being in a classroom and being surrounded by books, that's really only a very small portion of the job. And if there's anything else you think you might like doing, you should do that instead. So I went back to my parents who said, he's right. Why don't you think about law school? And, once you go to law school, you don't even have to be a lawyer. You'll be qualified to do anything. So I said, okay. So I went off to law school on the thought that maybe if I didn't like it, I would always return to writing and reading and something with literature. But I was never going to do law school later. So I figured I better start with law school. And I liked law school. I went off, I did all the things, studied really hard. And but then when I was graduating law school, they make it very easy for you to follow one specific path, which is to go to a big law firm. So that's what I did. And from the minute that I stepped into the law firm, I knew that I had made the wrong decision. And I, you
I
know,
know
I
how that goes, believe me.
Yeah, I joke that like I used to feel like I was playing dress up. Like I'd put on my lawyer clothes and I'd go into the office, and it was like all I wanted to do was escape. And this was, as far as law firms go, it was a lovely one. There were nice people, but it was not where I wanted to be. My primary goal each day was seeing if I could get out of the office by 8 p.m. And then if I did that, that was a success. And so I knew that if that was how I was measuring my success, that I was not where I belonged. So I started writing on the side and thought, if I can get a book published, then I can be a writer. And that would be much, something I'd much rather do. And it was also at the time in my life where I had just gotten married and we were starting to have kids. And we have 4, and we churned them out fairly quickly. And when I got pregnant with my 4th kid, my sister, who was also an attorney, said to me, you're going to have your four kids under the age of 7. I don't know how you think you're going to work as a lawyer and write a book and do all these things that are on your agenda, and you need to start making some choices. So that was when I left the law and went back to school to get my master's in creative writing. And while my kids were very little, I did that, some schoolwork, some homework, and then when my youngest child started kindergarten is when I published my first book.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was going to say, you've got some four assistants that can just, step in right away. You come to think about it. I thought, hey, you got four assistants right in the house. You don't have to pay them. So,
That's right. Yeah, so far the only assistance I'm getting from them is judgment on my social media posts.
oh, wow. Okay. Sounds like I got some amazing children right there. And this came to mind as well, too, that when you go to law school, and I thought you don't have to be like, getting a law firm. I thought every time you graduate law school, you had to take a bar exam in order to graduate or get into. I didn't know you have to take an exam and such.
You do have to take the bar exam. I left that part out. So I did take the bar and I passed it. I spent the whole summer after graduation studying for the bar exam. And it's so nerve-wracking. But I took it and I passed it, and I am still admitted to the bar in the state of New York. I am still a licensed attorney, and I could practice if I chose to, but I choose not to.
And what was that one precise moment that simply influenced you, what you do in the rest of your career? It was like that.
It was, I can't say that there was one precise moment. I think my whole childhood, the idea of being a writer sounded really cool, but it also sounded completely unrealistic to me. It sounded like I was saying I wanted to be a movie star or a rock star, and like somebody does it, but not in a million years did I think it would be me.
Right.
So and maybe that's just because I liked it so much that it felt like such a dream. But there was, I just knew like life is short, and I couldn't wake up every day for the next, call it 40 years or whatever it was going to be, and walk into a job that I didn't want to be doing.
And I think that makes sense today too, especially economy and everything going. And who are some of your favorite authors, writers, and what are some of your favorite books growing up?
Oh, growing up. Well, it depends what stage we're talking about, because there was
And any stage in general, it's like pick anyone. There's no
I,
limits.
I I have to say Great Expectations by Charles Dickens was in I read that in high school, and it was life-changing for me. I used to love the transcendentalist poets who now I
Nice.
would never pick up poetry now, but in high school it really spoke to me. And Jane Eyre, they call that the first romance novel, and I happen to be a huge romance reader, so when I got to read something like a romance novel for school, that was really awesome. But I also loved, a little younger, I loved all of those. There were these books called the Caitlin series, where
I think I've heard of that. Yes, the
yep,
Caitlin series.
and it was about, a teenage girl and sort of her struggles and her life. And she rode a lot of horses, which seemed very idyllic and wonderful. And also, when I was 10 years old, The Yearling, which if you haven't read it, it is an incredibly sad book about a boy who adopts like a pet deer that he finds, and he raises it and then struggles with whether or not he can keep it. And it's just such a gorgeous story. And for anyone looking for a book for a kid, I highly recommend it.
And it's on a must-read list as well too. When it comes to spring break, summer break, or anything like that, that's recommended. And she's also got some books out as well too, like he gets that from me. That's not a thing. Trouble the water, the Stockwell letters. But we'll be talking about counting backwards with Jacqueline Friedland in just a minute. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at SoundCloudStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in four countries, two strangers, one target, where truth is illusion and those who love be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson Z has gone great reviews. And Eve 11 enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forrest Riley, and Mayola. So grab your copy today. Burko's Missing by Mia Molson Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also, the Mike Wagner Show is brought to you by The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, and it is based on the life of King David, including 30 exquisite paintings and King David's Psalms. Sweet Psalmist gives a new perspective of David through the Psalms he wrote and his times of shepherd where it started and complicate your turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check out The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also brought to you by Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond, who has his latest release, All of Me, featuring the title track, I've Got a New Heartache, Bring Me Sunshine, Strike a Match, and more. Eric's a multi-award winning artist, inducted in numerous Hall of Fames, album, Entertainer of the Year, and will be releasing a new CD soon. Check out the amazing Eric Diamond today, ericdiamondmusic.com. Follow on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and all music platforms worldwide. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. 40 podcast platforms, over 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. And for great gift ideas, go to amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, makes great gifts 24/7. Go to amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to amazon.com/Mia Molson Zia. Great books, merchandise, and more. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, also iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Music, and your favorite podcast platform. And support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with the amazing best-selling author of 4 titles, including USA Today and Amazon best-selling list, Jacqueline Friedland, here on the Mike Wagner Show. Before we get to your latest book, Counting Backwards, about a legal thriller that tackles the timely yet timeless issues on a number of things. You wrote some books before that, which the majority pretty much made the New York Times, USA Today, Amazon bestselling list. He Gets That From Me, That's Not a Thing, Trouble the Water, and the Stockwell Letters. And tell us more about those.
Sure. So my first book was Trouble the Water, which is historical fiction. And it takes place about 20 years before the Civil War in the American South. And it's about a young woman who comes over to the US from England, and she falls into a situation with an abolitionist who's secretly doing all this Underground Railroad work. And once she finds out, she wants to get involved. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but the rest of the story takes it from there. So after I finished that book, though, I decided that I wanted to try my hand at contemporary fiction, which is when I wrote That's Not a Thing. And that book, I call it a New York City love story. It's about a young attorney who doesn't like her job. Surprise, surprise. And
that kind of ties into you, it seems like, in a
yes,
sense, right?
they tell you to write what you know about. So, but that's sort of where the similarity ends. It's about this young woman whose first great romance ended in enormous catastrophe, and it takes her years to get her life back on track. And when she's finally about to marry this wonderful guy, the first love comes back, and it's about how she deals with that. And then I enjoyed writing contemporary fiction, so I stuck with it. And I wrote my next book, He Gets That From Me, which is about a young woman who serves as a surrogate mother and finds out 10 years after the fact that she accidentally gave away her own biological child.
Oh,
Exactly. So that one was really interesting to write, quite an emotional struggle. And when I finished it, it was right around the time that the COVID lockdowns were starting.
okay.
And I was very overwhelmed having my 4 kids home from school and not really having understanding what was going on in the world and how scared we were supposed to be or not. And I just felt like I couldn't start a brand new project. So I remembered this story that I had seen when I was researching my first historical book about a man named Anthony Burns who was had like supposedly an enormous impact on American history and is not somebody that most people have heard of. So I said to myself, I'm just going to research that. And instead of creating anything new right now, I'm just going to see if maybe there's a story there. And as soon as I started researching, it's like the guy's life reads like a movie. He was the last fugitive slave ever returned to the South under the Fugitive Slave Act. And he is largely credited with having started the Civil War. It was like not he himself, but the issues surrounding his escape and return to the South. So that was another historical fiction novel based on, the era leading up to the Civil War. But then when I finished that, my agent said to me, Jackie, listen, you have to pick a lane. Are you writing historical fiction or are you writing contemporary fiction? So I said, okay, fine. I'll write contemporary fiction. So I started this new book, Counting Backwards, and it is actually dual timeline, and it contains both a historical timeline from the 1920s and a contemporary storyline from the 2020s. So apparently, I cannot contain myself, and I keep going back and forth between historical and contemporary.
And what prompted you to write about counting backwards, having a timeline from the 1920s and 2020s as well, too? What prompted that?
So back in 2020, I was reading the news and I saw a headline that said the uterus collector. And I thought, what a grim, creepy headline. I clicked on
Oh
it,
man.
right?
Oh, thank God I didn't have breakfast over that. I went like reverse.
Right? It's like Silence of the Lambs.
Oh my
So
gosh.
so I clicked on the headline and it was a story that was coming out of Georgia about some women, immigrant women at a detention center down in Georgia were claiming that they were being sterilized by a doctor there without their consent, one after another. So when I read that story, immediately remembered a project that I did my senior year of high school about an American woman in the 1920s who was also sterilized against her will. A 17-year-old girl went to court to fight this all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they sterilized her because they said that she was what they called feeble-minded. And it was during this period of time where scientists were learning about eugenics and creating a master race and all these horrible things. And the Supreme Court thought how wonderful they could sterilize this woman and they would be able to prevent her from having any more children who were just like she was. So when I read about the case in 2020 and I thought about the case in the 1920s, I just couldn't believe that 100 years later, something like this could still be, even if it was just allegations, the fact that even allegations like this could come out. So that was what prompted the whole story in my head. And I dreamt up this like Erin Brockovich style story about a woman attorney going and helping these women in the detention
Mhm.
facility.
And how did the courts determine that this woman was feeble-minded? Was it IQ test? Was it mental test or anything like that? How was it determined? What criteria?
It's funny you should ask because all evidence from the era actually shows that she was of completely average intelligence with no defects of any kind, whatever you might want to call them. Um, she was poor, she was uneducated, and her mother was allegedly a prostitute. She was on what they called the charity lists. So she was like collecting, charitable funds and food and things like that. And the mother was institutionalized because of this. Like they just didn't want to deal with her anymore. And then the daughter ended up in foster care and she went to school through 6th grade. And after that, she was basically like a maid for this family that she was living with. And when she was a teenager, she got pregnant and the family that she was living with said they didn't want an unwed young woman living in their home while she was pregnant. And so they sent her off to the institution. And the state of Virginia had just recently created this model sterilization law where they were sterilizing. You should, if you saw the text of the law, it was degenerates, imbeciles, idiots. The language of who could be sterilized in this law was outrageous. And so they needed a test case. And so they figured here they had this mother and daughter already both institutionalized. And then they just used them and there were no tests. They got some testimony from a nurse who had never met the young woman testified, yes, she seemed feeble-minded to me. And I know that she passed a note in class once. And like that was their evidence. It couldn't have been uh supported in a worse way.
And do you think the treatment of what happened to that woman back in 1920s, do you think under that same circumstance, do you think she would have survived the 2020s? Take someone from the 1920s. Do you think they could have survived the 2020s? Could have been better, same, or could have been worse?
I think it could have been worse. I think that unfortunately, there are still subsets of powerless women, powerless people who, even though most of us could look at a situation and say, "Oh my goodness, that's horribly wrong," and that should not be allowed to happen, and somebody has to step in, it doesn't always happen that there's somebody there to protect them. So, for example, the women, the immigrant women in the detention facility, a lot of them have no representation because if they're not American citizens, they are not entitled to a lawyer. The same way, you hear the Miranda rights in the movies where they say if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you or for you. That is if you are an American citizen, that it does not.
Ah, that's a clarification. Okay.
Yes. So these women, the only way they're going to get an attorney is if it's somebody who they're paying for, or if it's like somewhere like Legal Aid or some other nonprofit comes in and just says, "We'll just do this for you for free."
Mhm. And what about public defenders? Did they have access to having a public defender?
When you say it's this no, because it's that's the attorney that gets appointed to you.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to clarify. They said that yeah, a public defender that can basically just defend. You're not, public defenders aren't entitled to like represent anybody, anything like that. You get private attorneys. You also have a public defender that can like, defend like, no matter what, like pull up pool and say, okay, we'll defend this.
Right. Yeah. No, those you don't get one. Not if
Okay,
you're
just I
not
just
if
had
you're a non-citizen immigrant.
okay, I just had to clarify that too. Just wanted to make sure, and I think also too that of course, you had to like stay silent and everything else, but you also had, and I was going back to your question about uterus collectors. Like, how do they come up with it? It's like, I mean, why are we into uterus collecting? I thought that was just scratching my head.
Yeah, well, apparently there was a nurse at this detention center down in Georgia who was a whistleblower, and she said the doctor is removing all these women's uteruses, and then it was just the newspaper, I guess, came up with their sensationalist headline, "The Uterus Collector," which is nasty.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. And I think also too that was looking at some of this as well too, and I also thought about what are some of the issues, other issues that happened in 1920s that are parallel to also in 2020 from the book Counting Backwards.
Oh, there's so many. So first of all, there's when Carrie Buck, who is the young woman in the 1920s who gets pregnant, she tells the family that she was living with that she's been raped. And they don't want to hear it. They don't believe her. They don't care. All they care about is their reputation and the fact that there's this unwed pregnant woman, or pregnant girl in their home, and they want her out. And then in 2020, you have my fictionalized main character, Jessa, who goes into this detention facility and begins to suspect that there is a pattern of medical abuse. And when she comes out and she speaks to her husband and she speaks to the managing partner at her law firm, who also happens to be a man, she gets almost the same sort of dismissal of what Carrie got back in the 1920s of, we don't want to hear it. We don't like where this conversation's going. These are not things we want to think about, and you're on your own. So that was a big parallel. And then the other one is just sort of the idea of the government taking control over women through the use of their bodies, by depriving women of their bodily autonomy. So everybody hears that this book is about reproductive rights, and I think they immediately assume it's somehow related to abortion. And the book is not, there's nothing to do with abortion in this book. I don't even think the word abortion comes up in the book. What it is about, though, is this whole other class of reproductive rights that nobody ever talks about, like the right to reproduce, which we all assume is just such a fundamental right. Who would take that away? But it does get taken away. Or the right to informed consent and to be told what is going on with your body before a doctor does a procedure to you. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I think that all of those issues, they were prevalent in the 1920s, and they were prevalent the 2020s and now.
Okay. And what about in between that time as well? There have been some changes, but then also reverted 1920s. What are some of the changes that did take place, like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even like 2000 or 2010 before sadly going 2020 back towards 1920?
Yes. So I keep saying that it's one of these situations, like a two steps forward, one step back kind of
Right.
kind of situation. So, I mean, obviously, we had Roe versus Wade that gave certain protections to women, and that has been peeled back. And so there's all sorts of new challenges about that. But there were also, after the Carrie Buck case in the 1920s, her case paved the way for thousands and thousands of involuntary sterilizations in the US. And some were non-consensual, but the women at least knew what was going on. And others, the women did not even know what was happening to them. Like Carrie Buck's sister, for example, her younger sister was also in the institution, also sterilized, but she was told she was having her appendix removed, and she did not find out until decades later what had happened to her. She just knew she never had kids, and she didn't know why. And then there were also in the South during like the 50s and 60s, probably more the 40s and 50s, there were medical students would practice on minority women, and they called it the Mississippi appendectomy. But what they were
Ugh.
actually doing was sterilizing these women, and the women didn't know. And nobody was getting in trouble for it. And there were statutes in the different states allowing for the sterilization. Now, most of those statutes have been repealed. But the case of Buck versus Bell has actually never been overruled. But there hasn't really been an opportunity to challenge it, which you
Hmm.
need in order to overrule
Right,
it.
and plus you also had Jessa in there as well too, making this really tough decision. Taking on this case and putting pretty much everything at risk in that one.
Yes. Yes, she feels very conflicted at the beginning because she herself is going through some fertility struggles trying to get pregnant with her husband, and she wonders if she's so fixated on this issue because of her own emotional connection to it. But then she realizes that if this is really happening in the detention facility, somebody has to protect these women. And even if she's going to go it alone with nobody believing her and nobody supporting her, she just knows that she has to do what's right and to help them all.
And also, you also thought about as well too what happened in the 1920s as well, especially in the Deep South. And of course, thinking now, what about some of the others, like say with Hispanics, the Asians, and I think also Europeans, Indians, and some of the other races? Has that happened to them as well? Maybe a little bit better, and a little bit worse, and everything like that. Do you think race could also be involved in this whole thing?
Oh, absolutely. I think that especially for the case in the 2020s, all of these immigrant women, I mean, some were white, some were Latina, some were black, like, they're all different. They span the gamut. And it's really unclear if the lawyer in me has to say that the allegations out of Georgia have not been proved. There was a congressional investigation. They shut down the detention facility. So you can make your own assumptions if they thought it was worth doing that. And then there was a federal class action that was pending in court with something like 40 plaintiffs, 40 women. And it only just settled this past January, but the terms of the settlement have not been made public. So I don't know what it entails. Um, but hopefully, when the women were able to see some justice. But I think these issues they don't really know. It could be for insurance repayment. It could be to curtail the growth of the immigrant population. It could be both. Who knows?
I think that's something really to think about as well too. And lastly, what can people get from the book, and how can we learn from this whole thing?
I think that you got to read the book. And I think that the most important thing to learn from this book and this situation is how important it is to try to stay informed and to take action when you see something that you believe is an injustice.
I think that's really important as well. We'll get back to the book, Counting Backwards, with Jacqueline Friedland in just 1 minute. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of The Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Milton's Missing. Also, Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David. Amazon.com, keywords Serena Wagner, Sweet Psalmist, and brought to you by Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond with All of Me, new music coming soon, ericdiamondmusic.com. We'll be back with author Jacqueline Friedland of Counting Backwards after this timeout. We're back to author Jacqueline Friedland with Counting Backwards here on the Mike Wagner Show. And just one more thing, where can we find your book, and what's the website and how people contact you?
So my book is available wherever books are sold. Go find your favorite big online bookseller or indie bookstore. And my website is jacquelinefriedland.com. I'm going to spell it. It's www.jacquelinefriedland.com.
And make sure everybody check it out today. We're here with author Jacqueline Friedland with Counting Backwards here on the Mike Wagner Show. Just a few more things. What else can we expect in 2025 and beyond?
Oh, good question. I am working on my next book, hoping for it to come out in late summer 2026, a little over a year from now. And it's another contemporary fiction. And you can find me writing and reading and chasing after my children.
Okay, we'll certainly do that and find them on social media. And who do you consider biggest influence in career?
Ooh, definitely my mother. She taught me how to write, not creatively. She taught me, strict essay writing, but I fell in love with it and took it from there. And she has just instilled in me always work hard and follow what you love.
That's great advice. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
To anybody, I think you have to follow your passion. As my mother says, do what you love and the rest will fall into place.
And I think that's a great idea, even from a lizard, too. That's great advice. So, we're here with author Jacqueline Freeland of Counting Backwards here on the Mike Wagner Show, best-selling author, 4 titles in USA Today and Amazon bestseller. Jacqueline, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. And what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your books?
They should find me on my website. That's right, jacquelinefriedland.com. They can also, through my website, find my social media on Instagram at Jackie Friedland, and all the info you need is there.
We'll certainly check that out. Once again, Jacqueline, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having you soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Glad to have you back. We wish you all the best. And Jacqueline, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.